You wake up every day assuming your mind is yours. You trust your memories, your thoughts, your preferences, your will. You trust the boundaries between your inner world and the outer one. But what if those boundaries were breached? What if someone, not metaphorically, but literally, found ways to enter your mind and not to explore it, not to understand it, but to control it? This isn't science fiction. This isn't paranoia. This is history. Classified, redacted, then leaked, bit by bit. And now that we know, the only question that matters is, how much of your mind was built by someone else? Let's begin in 1953. The Cold War is intensifying. The U.S. fears communism, spies, ideological subversion. But deeper than that, they fear something harder to detect. Mind control. Not metaphorical control. Literal. The CIA begins a project. Not a theory. Not a rumor. A real documented operation. Its name? MK Ultra. Its goal? To find ways to control the human mind. The files declassified decades later describe experiments so bizarre, so inhumane, they sound like fiction. But they were real. And you paid for them. With your taxes. With your silence. With your trust. Let's go step by step. The CIA wanted to develop techniques to break down the human psyche, to erase memory, to implant new beliefs, to force compliance without visible coercion. They believed that if they could destroy the ego, they could rebuild it from scratch, in their image. To do that, they needed tools, and they found them. Let's talk about LSD. In the 1950s, LSD wasn't a party drug. It was a weapon. The CIA thought it could be used to loosen tongues, to shatter identities, to rewire perception. They dosed people without consent. CIA agents, military personnel, prisoners, mental patients, ordinary civilians. Some were told, most were not. One man, Frank Olsona, U.S. Army scientist, was given LSD without his knowledge. Days later, he jumped or was pushed out of a hotel window. The CIA called it suicide. His family believed otherwise. Decades later, so did investigative journalists. Let's talk about Operation Midnight Climax. It sounds like a joke. It wasn't. CIA operatives set up fake brothels in San Francisco and New York. They hired sex workers. They brought men into rooms, dosed them with LSD through drinks, then filmed them through two-way mirrors. The goal? To observe the effects of drugs and sexual manipulation on unsuspecting men. They weren't suspects. They weren't criminals. They were test subjects, guinea pigs, for psychological warfare. Let's talk about Dr. Ewan Cameron. He was a respected psychiatrist in Montreal, and MK Ultra gave him funding. Lots of it. Cameron believed he could erase mental illness by erasing identity. So he used high-dose electroshock therapy, repeated forced drug sedation, sensory deprivation, psychic driving, where patients were forced to listen to recorded messages for days, weeks, non-stop. Many of his patients didn't have serious mental illness. Some were just anxious, depressed, women seeking help for postpartum symptoms. They left his care broken, blank. Some forgot their names, how to talk, how to feed themselves. This happened in hospitals, funded by your government, sanctioned by science, hidden by silence. Let's talk about depatterning. It was the core of MK Ultra. You break the mind down, strip it of meaning, identity, resistance, then install what you want. They never fully succeeded, but they got far. And what they learned didn't vanish. It moved into advertising, into politics, into technology. But we'll get to that. For now, sit with this. that your government conducted illegal, torturous mind experiments on its own citizens, and no one was punished. No one stood trial. No one was held accountable. MK Ultra was officially shut down in the 1970s. But the techniques? They just went underground and into other forms, into other hands, and into your daily life. Let's go deeper. MK Ultra was never meant to stay in the shadows forever. It was a prototype, a blueprint, and once the techniques were refined, they spread, not through secrecy, but through culture. Let's ask a question. If you could control behavior without force, wouldn't you? If you could bypass resistance, if you could manufacture consent, if you could shape a population's beliefs through entertainment, marketing, education, would you? Others did. Let's talk about behavioral psychology. In the 1960s and 70s, researchers studied how humans respond to authority, suggestion, repetition, conditioning. They ran experiments that echoed MK Ultra, but under academic covers. Let's revisit the Milgram experiment. Participants were told to administer electric shocks to another person. Every time the person answered a question incorrectly, the voltage increased. The person being shocked wasn't real. It was an actor. But the participant didn't know. Most people obeyed, even when the actor screamed, begged, went silent, because the scientist in the white coat said, "Please continue." What does that tell us? That humans are programmable. That obedience can override empathy. That suggestion can override morality. Let's talk about media as suggestion. Television became the new mirror. But it didn't just reflect. It directed. MK Ultra failed to create perfect human puppets. But marketers learned something better. They didn't need to erase minds. They just needed to install ideas. Repeat a product enough times. It becomes a desire. Repeat a message enough. It becomes a belief. Make the screen glow just right. And it becomes a teacher. They call it priming, branding, persuasion. But it's conditioning. Let's talk about emotional anchoring. You pair a feeling with a message. Make someone laugh, cry, feel nostalgia. Then link it to your brand, or your politician, or your war. Over time, the brain can't separate the two. We associate feeling with truth, even if they're unrelated. That's how propaganda works. Let's talk about fear. MK Ultra relied on fear. So does modern media. If I can make you afraid, I don't need facts. I don't need logic. I just need the right image, the right soundtrack, the right pacing, and you'll beg for protection. You'll vote for safety. You'll hand over rights. You'll accept surveillance. You'll turn on your neighbor. Because fear makes you reactive, primitive, predictable. Let's talk about language as control. MK Ultra experimented with what's called loaded language. Certain words trigger certain emotional responses. They bypass logic. You don't hear tax cuts for the rich. You hear pro-growth policy. You don't hear civilian casualties. You hear collateral damage. You don't hear poverty. You hear underprivileged. Language reframes reality, and you accept it, without even realizing it changed. That's the point. Let's talk about entertainment as conditioning. Television shows, commercials, movies. They don't just sell products. They sell values, roles, norms. The beautiful are good. The poor are lazy. The outsider is dangerous. The soldier is noble. Over time, these messages become default assumptions. Not because you chose them, but because you absorbed them. And once something is absorbed, it feels like it came from inside. Let's talk about children. The younger the mind, the easier it is to shape. Advertisers target children because their defenses aren't built yet. Because a brand learned at 5 is a preference at 30. Because if you reach the mind before it questions, you can shape its lens forever. That's not marketing. That's programming. Let's talk about controlled opposition. Sometimes the system gives you two choices, but owns both. Left or right. Red or blue. Rebel or conform. It doesn't matter. Because the range of acceptable ideas is already defined. That's how MK Ultra worked. Not just with drugs, but with narrative containment. Let them think they're free. As long as they stay in the box. Now we live in a larger box. A more beautiful one. With screens. With music. With dopamine hits. With curated timelines. But the conditioning is the same. Let's pause. You've seen how it started in darkness. In secrecy. In labs. And how it bled into marketing. Into schools. Into culture. Now comes the final piece. How it entered your mind. Without you ever knowing. Let's stop pretending. You don't live outside this system. You were born into it. Grew up inside it. Internalized its messages before you had language for them. You didn't ask to be part of an experiment. But you are. You were. From the moment you opened your eyes. This experiment isn't in secret labs anymore. It's in your home. Your phone. Your feed. Your thoughts. Let's talk about surveillance capitalism. What MK Ultra tried to do in secret, corporations now do in public. They don't need to break you down. They don't need to erase your mind. They just need to watch you, track you, feed you what you already want. Just a little twisted. Just a little more addictive. Just a little more profitable. Your likes. Your hesitations. Your scrolling speed. They know what makes you stop. What makes you rage. What makes you buy. What makes you afraid. And they use that to train you, to pull you, to predict you. Not because they want to know who you are, but because they want to decide who you become. Let's talk about the algorithm. It's not neutral. It doesn't just show you more of what you like. It shapes you. Every click feeds it. Every feed shapes you. It rewards outrage, punishes nuance, favors emotion, destroys attention span. It's not evil. It's optimized. Optimized for what? Engagement. Because in the modern version of MK Ultra, the goal isn't control through suffering. It's control through comfort, addiction, distraction, saturation, until your mind is no longer a fortress. It's a hallway, and the doors are all unlocked. Let's talk about identity engineering. Modern propaganda doesn't tell you what to believe. It tells you who you are. You're this kind of person. You use these brands. You post these things. You hate those people. You vote this way. You believe this now. And when identity is the hook, belief becomes a side effect. Because you'll defend who you think you are, even when it's killing you. Let's talk about internalized programming. When the voice in your head repeats slogans. When your instincts mimic advertisements. When your anxieties match trending narratives. That's not a glitch. That's the update working. You don't need wires in your skull. You don't need electrodes. You don't need a drug. Your thoughts are shaped by repetition, by design, by a culture built not to liberate, but to produce. You are not living in a free marketplace of ideas. You're in a curated psychological ecosystem, optimized for profit, not truth. Let's talk about why no one notices. Because noticing is painful. To admit you've been manipulated feels like weakness. So, the mind denies. It resists. It rationalizes. Not me. I'm too smart. I'm too aware. But intelligence doesn't protect you from programming. It often makes it worse. Because smart people are better at rationalizing, better at justifying, better at pretending it was their idea all along. Let's talk about silence. True silence. When you unplug, when you stop scrolling, when the noise dies down, something strange happens. The voice inside you doesn't stop. It keeps going, replaying headlines, fears, judgments, memes, arguments, narratives. And then you realize, this is the system, inside your own head, not just surrounding you, installed in you. That's the final level of control. When you stop needing external manipulation, because the internal script does it for them. Let's end with this. MK Ultra was a warning, not because of what they did, but because of what it proved. That minds can be broken, that identities can be reshaped, that memory is malleable, that thought is programmable, and those who seek power will always seek the mind. So ask yourself, are your thoughts your own? Your fears? Your values? Your opinions? Or are you just the endpoint of decades of psychological design? The next time you reach for your phone, ask why. The next time you feel certain, ask who benefits. The next time you say, that's just who I am, pause and ask, was I ever given the chance to be anyone else?